Welcome to this video where we will talk about the movie The Bourne Identity. We will begin by exploring the movie's storyline, summarizing its plots and discussing the cast and characters. Then we will take a closer look at the film's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will share reviews and audience reactions to give you a well-rounded perspective. Let's get started. The Bourne Identity film. The Bourne Identity is a 2002 spy film loosely based on the Robert Ludlum's novel of the same name and the first film in the Bourne film franchise. It stars Matt Damon as Jason Bourne, an amnesiac attempting to discover his true identity amidst a clandestine conspiracy within the Central Intelligence Agency to track him down and arrest to kill him for inexplicable failing to carry out an official unexamined assassination and then failing to report back in the afterwards. The film also stars Frank Portent and Maria Cherry Scoffer as Alexander Conkling, Clive Owen as the Professor Brian Cox, and the Walt Abbott and the Julia Stiles as the Nick Parsons. The film was directed by Doug Liman and adapted for the screen by Tony Gilroy and William Blackhorn for the novel of the same name, written by Robert Ludlum, who also produced the film alongside Frank Marshalla. Universal Studios released the film to theaters in the United States on June 14, 2002, and it received a positive critical and the public reaction. The film was followed by the 2004 sequel, The Bourne Supremacy, as the third part released in 2007, entitled The Bourne Ultimatum, and the fourth in installment, The Bourne Legacy, in 2012. Plot. During a stormy night, a body is seen floating among the waves with a light flashing from it. A fishing boat passes and a group of Italian fishermen are playing cards below dock. One of the men throws one scraps and overboard and sees the body as at sea. Five of the fishermen then haul the man onto their ship, believing him to be dead, but then see him move. They take him down to their card table and lay him flat while the ship's doctor gets his tools. The doctor cuts off his wetsuit with a scalpel and revealing two belt wounds in the man's back. The bullets are removed and the doctor notices a scar on the man's hip, which is cut into finding a small metal device. As the examines it funded production and an account number for a bank in Zurich before his attack by the man who was rent and the concessions. The man asks what happening and the doctor introduces himself as a Giancarlo, explaining that he is a monk side and the friends and need to rest. The man reveals that cannot remember his own name and faints. Central Intelligence Agency legend Varinja. In a part of the Central Agency Variance and Dennis Zord enters Alexander Conkling and the office and tells him that they have confirmed the mission has failed. Conkling looks at the picture of luxury yacht and his desk back on the fishing boat. Bourne helps the fisherman while recovering from his injuries and trying to remember who is this. After 2 weeks on the boat, Giancarlo comes to him and Bourne tells him the know how to notes and speak different languages, but still noticing it coming back. Giancarlo is telling him to rest at he will back. The next day, the fisherman docks in the Ongila. Giancarlo gives Bourne enough money to get to the Switzerland and the Bourne thanks him. He takes to train the Zords and ends the sleeping on a park bench in the snow. Two police officers approach Bourne asking for identification when they cannot provide it and they start to arrest him, but Bourne reacts by disarming door and the rendering with both unconscious. He flees the scenes, discarding both his distinct orange and the jacket and the policeman's guns. Back at the CIA headquarters, men are watching footage of the Nakwana Wombist telling a camera that someone had here to kill him. A CIA official explains that the footage is from the Paris 2 days ago and then Wombosi is a problem because he is writing a book about the agency that will detail name. Wombosi wants the CIA to put him back in the power in 6 months. The official then explains that the director wanted to know if anyone from the CIA were involved in Bombay's assassination attempt. Debuted and directed Ward Abbott leaves the room and meets with Alexander Conkling about talks with the Tretson and asks it has been involved for the attempts to wipe his lives. Kinklon says that they lost contact with their assassins but have to trying to find him the last 2 weeks. The next morning, Bourne enters the bank. He asks to access his account and give the members numbers for the device for his hip. He takes to lift the high security wallet and asks to scan in the handprint into a machine. A safe deposit box is brought to him which he is open to find a passport with his name, Jason Bourne, and a home address in Paris. Bourne then lifted the top layer of the box up to find the several more passports containing his picture under different names, a large amount of the sorors and currencies, and 9 CAGI and the handmade. He attempts to content the box into a red bag but leaves the gun in box and returns it before leaving. He asks how too long has been since he was there and told about their weeks. A man watches him exit, then pick up a phone to make a call. Bond then uses a iPhone to get himself connected to his home in the Paris. He hears the own voice on a recorded answer phone message, so hangs at the closest street, a wedding place, as he walked down a snow-covered road. Bond notices a pair of police officers watching him from across the street. He quickens his pace and runs front a train, only to look over his shoulders and them following him. He reaches the US consulate and waits in line, noticing a young woman attempting a get visa when American and Swiss authorities attempt to capture him at the US consulate. He offers a marry. He learns recruits and young women in the desperate needed of money, $20,000 to take him to Paris, the city of the address on his Jason Bourne passports. Meanwhile, Alexander Conklin Charles Cooper, the head of the CIA Group Operation Treadstone, assured Dupuit and the director Abbott that will destroy any evidence connecting them to the failed agency attempt. On the website, he active three assets to take down their follow operative, Castle, Manheim, and the professor. When Bourne arrives at the address on the passport, he is immediately recognized by the building superintendent and the beast on the content of apartment. He could clothes in the shipping business in search of more clothes. He hit radial on his phone and connected to the hotel Regina, who recognized one of the aliases from another passport, June Mitchell Can. They tell him that the news guest who died his weeks before in a crash a bonders this castle blast through a window and engage Bourne in hand-to-hand combat. After Bourne, Subas has attempted to interrogate him by Castle jumps on window, preferring suicide to interrogative by Bourne for information. Maria and finds wanted poster in Castle bag and he have Bourne pictures on them. Bourne continuously advises Mary to leave as trying to figure out who he is and a people after him. He tells her to go to the place and explain everything to them. He chooses to remain with him and encourages him to fight her and in out with her help. After the eluding the Paris police and spending the night in hiding, they go to the hotel Regina. There Mary asks for the John Mitchell Can's Bond hotel records. Meanwhile, plants a body in the Persian morgue to feel Wobomo into thinking Nag and the attempted assassin and dead by Womsey recognize that the body is not assailant and the cookline has Womsey killed his by the agent known as the Professor. Bond investigate and the incident, the previous assassination attempted, and John Mitchell cans and contact concludes that he is the failed killer. He married and escaped city into the country to stay and house of Ammon, an old friend of Mary, where Jason decided that no longer wants to be was. In the morning, the professor comes to kill Jason. Bond uses double barreled and shotgun to blow at a weapon and knock and drugs the professor who was on a overlook the home and armed with a SIG 550 sniper relief. And while run of the wood, Bond ultimately shoots the professor twice with the shotgun and interrogates him briefly, revealing their mutual connection to the operation. Treadstone, the professor dies almost immediately from the blood loss, saying, "Look at what they make you." Keeping the $30,000 Bond sent Mary and with the rest of the money for his safety, he uses the professor's cellular phone to arrange a meeting with the Cockline on the pond. Nofi uses a distinction to plant a tracking device on Conklin vehicle to discover the location of Operation Treadstone safe house in Paris. After following the vehicle of the safe house, Bond uses an electronic device to track and the car alarms of the cars parked on the stage, and when the noise distracts the guard and he climbs into the Operation safe house where Mickey Parsons and the Cockline are. When the meets Cockline holding him at the gunpoint, he finally begins to remember his last mission. He had backed off the official unsanctioned and the Wombussy Association after the seeing Wombussy children being unable to control his emotion. Bond was then shot by Wombussy, who escaping the fat movie boat and left behind for dead in the water. After this memory, he tells Conklin he is a leaving Treadstone permanently and warns him not to go follow. He realizes Conklin's silently targeted as alarm has backup on the way. Bourne leaves Nikki unarmed and has shooted out with several CIA agents and expect to the night Abbott, having decided the trade zone should be closed on good, has the last operative Mahine and the murder Cochran with a silencer. Abbott then goes before a oversight committee and the Glebe explains the threat zone away as the effective association and training program, then immediately shift the focus on hiring on the idea of a new project codenamed and Blackberry, who is the address until the third film in the series, the Bourne Ultimate. And sometime later, Jason finds Mary is make nose renting and scooters, the tourist and the two rent on the film and production. Director Dov Lehman started the had been a fan of the source novel by Robert Ludlum since he read in high school. Near the end of the production of Lehman's previous film, Swingers, Lehman decided to develop a film adaptation of the novel after more than 2 years of the securing rights to the book and the Warner Brother and further year of screenplay development with the screenwriter Tony Glory, and the film went through the 2 years production. The Bourne Identity DVD commentary featuring Joel Lehman, and while the on-site filming difficulties with the studio slowed the film development and caused a rift between the director and Universal Studios, and executives were unhappy with the film pacing, emphasis on small-scale action, the sequences, and the general relationship between themselves. And Raymond has suspicious of the director studio environment. A number of reshoots and rewrite late in development and scheduling problem delayed the film its original release target date of September 2001 to June 2002 and took it $8 million over budget from the initial budget of $52 lakh. Screenwrite the glory fixed element of screenplay rewrite almost throughout the entire duration of filming. A particular point of the connecting in the regard the original, the Glary script and the scenes set the farmhouse near the film conclusion. Lemon and the actor by Damon fought to keep the sense in the film after the were accesses to the third act reward that insist about the studio. Lemon and Damon argued that the scenes are were low key. They were integral and audiences' understanding of the Bourne character and the film's central themes, and the farmhouse sequences consequently went through many rewrites from the original incarnation before its inclusion in the final product. Other and issues included the studio desire to subtitle, monitor, and the purview for the Paris in order to lower costs. Lemon insisted on the use of the French speaking and film crew and post test audiences' reaction to film Paris. Finally, the later required a late return to location in order to shoot a new, more action oriented conclusion to the Paris story arc. Lemon described the production as a stroll setting and the early conflict that the Lemon and had the studio, but then it was an overtly difficult process, stating, "When I hear people saying that the production was a nightmare, it's like a nightmare. Shooting always hard, but a finish." Lemon's directorial method was often hand-on. Many times he operated the camera himself in order to create when the belief was more intimate relationship between the himself in material and the actor. He felt that his connection was lost of the simply observe the recording on a monitor. This was a mindset and developed from the background as small scale in filmmaker. Lemon approached a wide range of actors, the role of Bourne, including Russell Crowe and the slavist and style before he eventually cast Matt Damon. Lemon found the Damon understood and appreciated the thought Bourne identity. We have its share of action. The focus was primarily on character and plot. Damon, who had never played such a physically demanding role, instead of performing many of the stunts himself with the stunt geograph and Nick Paul and the trainer Jeff Immediate, Damon underwent and 3 months of extensive training in the stunt work with the use of weapons, boxing, and Xpara. Raman eventually performed as a significant number of the film's stunt himself, including hand-to-hand combat and the climbing the safe house walls near the film's conclusion. Franca Potent and the performance in Ron Rule Run prompted Lemon to approach for the part of Mary Hilon and Court. Lemon decided to cast an actor who was unfamiliar to American audiences yet to various two-table pose opposite to Bourne character. Filming took place in the Prague, Paris, Maria Moknos and the Zork. Several scenes set in what also filmed in the Prague. The acclaimed car chase sequences were filmed in the primarily by second unit under and the director Alexander Wood. The unit shot in the various location around Paris while Iman was filming the main story and the elsewhere in the city. The finished footage was eventually added together to create a illusion of coherent and journey. Lemon confused the anyone to fuel knows Paris to find the illogical sense of the locations used in the car by actually connected to each other. Lemon only is a few of the shots himself. His notable chase sequences shots of these and the Matt Damon and Franca Potent while inside the car. The inner working of the fictitious trader zone and organization were inspired by Lemon fathers in the National Security Agency under President and Ronald Reagan. By the particular inspiration was Lemon's father's memory regarding involvement in the investigation of the land Contra affair by aspects of the Alexander Conklin character were based on his father's recollections of Olives and North Lemon adapted the jettisoned much of the connected of the novel beyond the center premise in order to modernize the material and the conform to his own belief regarding United States foreign policy. However, Lemon was careful not to cram and the political views drawn the audience's throat. There was an essential concern regarding the film possible observances and the overall repercussion in the Alfreds on the September 11 attack, but these concerns provide groundless. Reception. The critical reception of the film was largely positive, with the film review collection website Rotten Tomatoes giving the film an 83% approval rating. Roger Ebert gave the film the stars and praised it for its ability to observe the viewer in its sparkcraft and the Damon's ability to focus and sincere, concluding that film was unnecessary but not unskilled. And Walter Cha of Film Frack Central praised by the film its passing and action sequences, describing them as kinetic, fair, and the intelligent, very payoff packaged with the movement contemplation crucial to the creation of tension, and the movie could understand as a clever subversion of the genre. Charles Travis and Salman Khan acclaimed the film entertaining, handsome, and the gaping. The Bourne Identity something is a anomaly among the big budget summer blockbuster, a thriller with some brain failing behind it, more attended to story the character than to spectral, and the praise Lyman for the giving a film tough madness and the never give away in the cynicism of the hopelessness, and Gonzalez of Silent Magazine as a Not Goff Lyman restricting approach to the material, as well as Matt Damon and the Frank Portent's strong chemistry, and the ultimate conclude the film was smart but not smart enough. J. Homerman of The Village was dismissed the film as a banal, as a disappointed compared against the Lemon's previous installed and release on Glimmerman as a criticized the film for a solent rodents and the Lemon's supply handle starting the disguise particular acclaims, and the directed across the film's central car by Chase was directed as an exciting action highlight and of the best release in the genre. In the opening weekend, the Bourne Identity took the $2,07,118,640 US in 2006 38 theaters, and March of 2007 the film has grossed in the United States and many more dollars every less as the total worldwide gross of upper dollars. Release and sequels. On January 2001 and 2003, Universal Studios released The Bourne Identity on VHS and on the DVD in the US in two formats: a single disc widescreen and the collector's collection, and the full screen collector's editing. Both the contain supplementary materials including a making of documentary and a commentary from the direct of Lyman and the deleted scene. On the July 13, 2004, Universal Studios released a new DVD film in the US in the preparation of sequel cinema debut, and the DVD also came into the formats a single disc widescreen extended edition and the single disc of full screen extended edition. Both contain supplement material including interviews with the Matt Damon deleted scene, alternative opening and ending, a documentary on the consult fight, and information features on the CIA amnesia, the alternate ending of the DVD Bourne collapsing and viewing of the search of Matt walking with the Abbott standing over him and getting off, return to the CIA neither continued, and the commentary of DTS track present in the collector's editing. The film was also released on UMD for Sunny Position and portable on August 30, 2005, and the HD DVD on July July 2007. The Bourne Identity was followed by 2007 The Bourne Supremacy, which received a similar positive critical and the public reception, but they received some criticisms of the hand and the camera work and observed are made much action sequences difficult to see. The Bourne Supervisor as directed by Paul Greengrass with the Doll Lyman returning up produced and Matt Damon inspiring his role Jason and Thor. The Bourne Ultimatum was released on August 3, 2007 and was again directed by Paul Greengrass and stars Matt Damon. Like The Bourne Supremacy, Ultimate received generally positive and critical public reception but also received similar criticisms of the camera work. With the release of The Bourne Ultimate on the DVD, a new DVD of The Bourne Identity was included in a box set with The Bourne Supremacy and The Bourne Ultimatum. The box set in the untitled The Jason Bourne Collection, the new Bourne Identity DVD called the Explosive Edition, with which includes all the previous extra features as the Explosive Extended Edition plus feature commentary with the director Doll Lemon. However, the DVD itself does not contain commentary, and so far Universal Home Entertainment has home no effort to correct the problem. The spine number on the version of the Bourne Identity is 61103874. Universal is moving ahead with the fourth installment of the Bourne Identity franchise, though both Matt Damon and the Paul Greengrass claimed why they are calling it squat after the third installment. Both are reported to be appearing in the fourth film. Which Bourne movie made the most at the box office? Few movie heroes refines and 21st century Hollywood better than the Jason Bourne, created by Robert Ludlum. The character famously portrayed by the Matt Damon in all big screen adaptation, originally featured in 3 of the author's novels released between 1980 and 1990, followed by 11 novels written by Ark Van Lubberstad between the 2004 and 2019, and the 3 Brian Freemansons and 2020. At the moment, fans will be glad to know than other installment in being developed. But how the movie performed at the box office? Distributed by Universal Pictures, most of the Bourne movie had with great theatrical runs. Thanks of the quality of each picture and constant release of the new reading material, fan interest rate by remained high. The most recent release has been most impressive numbers, and the Universal Pictures can expect things to even better if they keep the engineering run. Here is the box office numbers look. The each Jason Bourne film ranked from the lowest to highest. The Bourne Identity 2002, $214 million. Attempted to develop the Jason Bourne movie began as early as 1981, but the plans was hampered by the usual cycle of the development. Hell United Dolph Lyman showed interested, and the Universal took at the high rate rights from the Warner Bros. By the theaters to the Bourne Identity, the fascinating story of a man of psychogenes and the mission as the revealed by the fisherman in the Mediterranean Sea. He goes to a mission to find ice the rule, while at it gets handled by the assassins and uncover a major CIA conspiracy. Powering through a stack 2002 summer, Lyman and intellectual approach bigger names like Brad Pitt, Russell Crowe, Tom Cruise, Ardent, and the Shorans, and the stylist Strallen on the role of the Jason Bourne, and it unclear of the margin might have been higher with them on prod. Not less, we are glad that we got more Diamond released in the summer of 2002. The Bourne Identity was a sign of story competition, especially for the XXS, which the cater to the same spy action demographic. Man in Black, second Spider-Man, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack the Clone, and the Austin Power in the Gold member had also been released around the same time, as there is a plenty of the force of Born to Battle. Thankful, the film powered through with its own movie energy and aired through the myself and the managed decent numbers that granted a sequel. The Bourne Legacy 2012, $276 million. The Bourne Legacy is a Jason Bourne movie without Jason Bourne, that the character is shown in the pictures and mentioned several times. Matt Damon chose not to do another movie of the Paul Greengrass was not returning, so the studio showed him to side, and the German runner here, the Aaron Gross runner as an agent of program and known as the outcome leads a quiet studio life. Soon his space gets distorted with the Eric Barry Award and Norton with a man build. The United decided to eliminate everyone on it. Matt Damon's absence discouraged some fans. Through the recent by genre standards, the Bond legacy numbers are all low of the franchise, which make the sense. And making a Bond movie without the Bond was a movie granted to a limited section of the fans. Furthermore, German Runner was not big an actor than he is known, and still the further installment remains the understand spy movie runner out does himself, and so does the rest of the cast. The Bond Supremacy 2004 $290 million. Trouble follows Jason Bourne and everywhere, and the Bourne supremacy happen to be enjoy life in the India United Russian agent Quarrel urban from the boy's friends from the theft and millions of dollars from the CIA. Killer begins the hunting Bourne, intending to kill him, and while it and build meat for the title hero and killing his girlfriend Maria, the iconic the killed my love trop thus plays out the Bourne moving agency, and while also attempting to prove his innocence. Audiences were eager to see the what next. Given the entertaining the first and had been people the box ticket in the number eager to see what Bond do next. Nomination of the numerous accolades, including 3 at the World Stunts and Awards, this March cynical installment functions as a both precious guides of the American intelligence system and the refreshing respective action thrill, and the Supermax cause members are also full justice to director Paul Greengrass, Magic Screen, and spreading the film's fan and of the first 9 weeks and the top 10 at the domestic box office. The Bond Ultimatum and the Ultimatum 2007 for $44 million. Chosen by the National Board of the Review as one of the top at the film 2007, the Bond Ultimatum still finds the Jason Bourne in the Wagner mode. When the investigation journalist working for The Guardian learned about the controversial CIA Black as a program, he does not digging a Bond bears to give him all the information he needs to make this former paymenters pay. However, things the dangerous and sincere finger and the assassins to hunt down the both Bond and the journalist. A win of the both Metro Diamond and the studio, although it shares the title and the Robert Ludlum's $2 and the 2019 best-selling novel plot in the entirely different. However, that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Atmospheres and the time and lyric this visual arresting space action film makes ponder special issues like the branch of conformities and the certainty of change, the desire to do right thing. With its $44.1 million worldwide gross against the budget of $110 million, and the Bond Ultimatum became the Matt Damon highest grossing film with his and the land in the 69 to 83 $690 opening weekend gross. Also, it made the highest August opening weekend beating Rush Hour 3. It would break the record a whopping 7 years until it was overtaken by James Gunn's Guardian of the Galaxy in 2004. 2014, Jason Bourne 2006 for $15 million. Matt Damon returned to the franchise came as a total surprise. He must have a missed Bond, but he did franchise full time, and Green Pass chose not to the with and the Bond whatever. As a little he went to the simpler Jason Bond and walked at the start of the movie. We are reminded of the fact that the CIA are the too incompetent and the Bond is too good. The agency still has been able to capture him, so that the scent of cybersecurity helped lead the hunt him down. Meanwhile, Bond tries to uncover secrets about the father. Bourne return was justified. Jason Bourne is affecting beautifully photographed and story by a familiar character. Greengrass handled at the wide commendable restraint and the tenderness, outfitting the picture with more dialogue and the efficiency emergence and was the case before. Consequently, the film became a major commercial hit, almost tripling the budget worldwide. The movie opened the first place in 50 markets by making it most successful film in the franchise. Of note, it was only the second biggest Hollywood release of the 2016 for movie that did not involve comic book superheroes or animated graphic and animals. The Bourne Identity is Doe Lyman developing space thriller star one with Miles Taylor and Redmayne in talks. The Bourne Identity director Doe Lyman is teaming up with the actor Miles Taylor and Edward Redmayne for the action space thriller drama on the big screen. Lyman took the Hollywood by storm in 2002 with The Bourne Identity. This first action movie through this never directed any of the other entries in the film series, primarily ensured by the Matt Damon. He has the helmet and the various movies in the genre with Lyman in the preparing to return those roots. with this stellar and Redmine-led film. According to the Variety, the two actors are in the discussions to star in the Star One. The movie will follow to the weirdly mismatch and the CIA agent with talent playing to during a charismatic one Redmine playing a straight and the straightest with character Will album on the top screen mission across thousands of miles of enemy territory to cover deliver army. Star One is based on the untold and story that described in the official synopsis the first intelligence star ever awarded for the one of the most important yet least now missions in the modern history. Lyman will directed to the future and the family plans David Coglash and return in the script. This will be Lamon's follow-up to The Visions and the upcoming characteristics focused biographical thriller movie starring Casey Affleck, Pat Watson, Gal Gordon, and the Isla Fisher with star is a star set of the launch the Chinese market soon with the CAA handling the movie's domestic scale and the Black Bear internationally. While Star World will market the first time that trailer and Red may have worked together. Neither actor is a stranger to action to the spy thriller, and the trailers credit on the front include the Driver's movie and the Grok, Radmin, and the started in the TV series The Day of the Jackal, which is based off the Frederick Forsyth's novel of the same name and edited in 1973 film adaptation. The show was also been renewed season 2. Taylor concurrently Bison in the biopic Mitchell, which have plays to the John Branch Mitchell Jackson Atomics and the attention of the Cannes Film Festival, which soon be able to see him starring opposite the Scarlett Johansson and Edmund Driver in the Paper Tiger, which has been nominated for the Palm. And he is also attached to the animated movie The Ark and the artwork, which is set to the release of fall 2027. Redmond has not started a movie since 2022 when Fantastic Beasts, The Secret of the Dumb Road, and The Good Nurse were released. However, he will back to the screen in the February 2027 for the thriller Panic carefully with the stars Julius Roberts, Elizabeth Olsen, and the Brian Tried Henry. In addition to the Bourne Identity, Lyman's action credit included Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Jumper of the Edge of the Tomorrow, and Chose Walking. It was also announced in August 2025 that would return with the Angelina Julia for a spy thriller called The Initiative at Unclear. The Lamb still intended to make The Initiative, which was previously expected to begin filming in the first quarter of the 2026. Next of the star is one of the new priority. This 2002 action movie almost killed a $1.6 million franchise before it began. The Jason Bourne franchise delivered some of the best action movie of the 21st century, but it all nearly fell apart before the first movie was finished. Based on the novel by the Robert Ludlum, Matt Damon stars as a Jason Bourne in the movie, a former spy who gets the amnesia who also being hunted by the people who trained him. The Bourne Identity was released in 2002, launched Damon as the next great action star while also bringing a new edge to the spy movie genre. It was followed by the Bourne Supremacy in 2004 and the Bourne Ultimatum in 2007 before the franchise was rebooted with Jerome Renner in the Bourne Legacy. The first three Bourne movies were praised for their grounded and smart script as well as the visual and action sequences. However, the behind the scene creation of the franchise was not smooth for the fans and might expected, and the entire thing nearly ended in the disaster. The Bourne Identity near sunk the franchise before it began with a troubled production. Along with the popular source material, the Bourne Identity has a traffic and a production crew behind it, which give the movie a lot of legitimacy. Latman become a Hollywood biggest star with the acclaimed movies like Good Will Hunting and hits like the Ocean's 11 director Dov Lyman and the proved himself with the Swingers and Go in the 1990s, and which the screenwriter Tony Glory and was not the acclaimed creator of the Under. He was new and now was another strong factor in the movie. However, Gilroy looked back to the Bourne Identity, relieving the mess of the production and the convinced and that movie was simply not go to work. It was an absolute disaster, and it was a disaster. And then 9/11 saved the movie because it got pushed on the and go to shut down, and the pressure was taken off. But that movie that was a whole year away from the massive rehab, everything else it was just absolutely recluster of the dead return into success all the time. It really unbelievable because nothing should you have all the bad blood and the disagreement and the drama. Oh my god, say I it was been most shambolic success in the Hollywood I can think of. With all the bad blood, Glory talks about it as surprising the Lamb did not return to the franchise after the first movie being replaced by Paul Greengrass. However, Damon and the Lamb work together again. The instigators and the suggestion are the disagreements and between them the resolved long ago. Gilroy comments on the movie decay and actually ending up the helping of the movie in the ending highlight the degree of log that can go into the Hollywood production. However, Gilroy also admits that regardless of the issue, there were not a lot of movie like the Bourne Identity at time, and it helped stand out the something specially. It pains me to say the first was the probably the best one. I mean it really. It has such a weird scent, and in the one it come on, I just it really has its own smell and its own flavor, and what it is it really unique. I wish could say it was a national and the one out in the like it's a wonderful thing. It does not matter how it happened, it was just happened. It came to be. The Bond trilogy kept getting better. The first three Bond movies are the perfect spy thriller, tonic glory and high praises of the Bond identity, but the original three movies in the franchise really built beautiful on each other. Paul Greengrass style for the Bond supremacy proved the perfect of the franchise, bringing in the handles, cameras, techniques, and they gave a unique feel to the action sequence. The Bond movie became a huge influence and the Hollywood action movie, with the James Bond franchise clearly drawing from it with Chasneos and the Royal. The sequence explores more about the mythology of the universe, including the Skrulls and the Tritons. However, it was at the standalone movie giving up depth compared to the character of Jason Bourne, allowing Matt Damon to give a announced performance alongside the action moment. While there are some of the consider the Bond franchise to be one of these, our trilogy with their second movie is the best. The Bond Ultimatum is not for the behind. It was the more difficult task of the providing answered a lot of the franchise question and the bringing the story a close. It does so exciting and the satisfying way. However, it is the action of the trilogy that the really stands out in the fight sense, get hunting and the intense of each and trial with the car chases. I have to define that these movie get bolder and the Bond movie became hugely influential in Hollywood action movie with the James Bond franchise clearly drawing from it with Casino Royale. While the Bond franchise failed after the original trilogy, the franchise has been in the decline since, and the original trilogy ended. With the incredible success of the Bond trilogy, it is not surprising that we're attempting to keep the franchise going. With the rise of the MCU as a cinematic universe of the Bond movie was attempted, even the bringing in the actual Avenger German Renner, it is start to Bond legacy. Renner played Eric Cross, Aaron Cross, and other treatment agent to his of the and the same time as the Jason Bourne adventures. This was also followed by a TV series Treadstone exploring the origins of the Shadows organization of the center of the franchise. However, Treadstone was cancelled while Renner Bond movie never got a sequel. They all work on their own and tell a larger story that feel complete by the time the Bond ultimatum comes to an end. It could be easy to blame those projects on the lack of the franchise main character. However, Damon returned for the fourth movie, Jason Bourne, which also ending and up being a disappointment critically and franchise, and the issues by all these later Bond movies that were outside of the original story of the trilogy. Although things nearly fall apart by making the Bond identity, those movie feel like they connected naturally and necessarily. They all work on their own, but as a larger story that feels complete by the time the Bond ultimatum and come on, and these other stories felt like ones to want to tell about but did not need to tell. Jason Bourne is a complex character and there is a big world to explore those movies. However, the satisfaction world felt the ending of the Bond ultimatum and made the ended to the something really special to continue the franchise. While there is a talking and talk of a fourth Jason Bourne movie, nothing has felt that special yet. Classic Stephen King book will become a movie from Bourne Identity directed after two TV adaptations. A movie adaptation of the Stephen King's The Stand and the work originally published in 1978. The classic Stephen King book follows the character during and after the outbreak of the visual kills than 99.4% of the worldwide population and the epic battle of good versus evil. The Ashes and the Stand has been adapted a television miniseries twist with the first adaptation in the 19 1994, starring Gary Since, Molly Ringwald, and the Jameson Sheridan. The second adaptation, who caused the include Jameson, Martin Alexander, Scarlett, and the Whoopi Goldberg, and the release in 2020. What this means of the stand. It is in development but will be challenging to adapt. The stand movie is in the every early stage of development as it only the Lemon and Thompson attached at this time. The project still needs to find writers. We will have the challenges of adapting Stephen King all-time longest book as television ministers, and the 1994 and 2024 adaptation had more time to tell their stories. The 1994 versions ranked from the 6 hours over 4 episodes, while the 2020 versions came to the 8.5 hours after 9 episodes. Unless the story is split and up into the multiple installments, the story will have to be considered and extensively for the stand movie. While the 1994 adaptation was a largely well received, the 2002 miniseries and has a negative reception from the critics and general audiences. This newest take, helmed by Lemon, present and the opportunity to garner more favorable reception. That being said, it will be a challenge to win over their familiar with the sources material, since substantial and element will in visual had to the cut in order to have a reasonable runtime for the feature film to take on the stand become a movie. It is not well suited by the being movie. The Stand is one of all-time favorite novel and the feature one Stephen King best book ending. At the same time, I am spectral event as usual. I can be successful adapted as a movie, especially when it has already been challenging to adapt is a miniseries. Lemon is also the integral choice since one of the film have been action movie and the action is not one of the most important element of the stand. It rewrites and can join the project. I will be more optimistic, but for now I question whether it will be a success. Pains me to say, but probably the best one. Tony Gilroy remembers the Bourne Identity as an absolute roller coaster of short that turned into a success. The Bourne Identity right reflects on the first movie in the series 2002. The Bourne Identity is an adaptation of the Robert Ludlum novel of the same name, following the story of a man who faces amnesia and attempting to escape the assassins and regains his memory. The first film in the franchise saw a screenplay written by the Tony Gilroy and William Blackhorn and was directed by the Don Lemon. The Bourne Identity cast included Matt Damon, Cherry Scooper, Franca Potente, Clive Owen, and the Brian Cox. It is an interviewee, the load boxes Gilroy reflect on the Bourne Identity. The writer explains that the attack on 9/11 ended up rescuing the movie as it got delayed and gave them and a time. Before that point, the film had been an absolute disaster, with the Gilroy going so far as so much it was just an absolutely roller coaster of short than the turned into a success. He goes on to say that the Bourne Identity is the best movie in the franchise. Check out the full quote from the Gilroy below. It was an absolute disaster, and it was a disaster, and then 9/11 saved the movie because it got pushed off, it go shut down, and the pressure was taken off. But that movie was a whole year after the massive rehab. Everything else is just absolute roller coaster of the short then returned into the success all the time. It really unbelievable because nothing should all the bad blood and the disagreement and the drama. Oh my god, say I said it is been most shambolic success in the Hollywood I can think of. It pains me to say, but the first one probably the best one. It means the really is. It has such a wide stand on it when it comes on. It just as it really has to own smell and its own flavor. And the what is it? It really unique. I wish I could say it was a national and the event out, but it take exist. It a wonderful thing. It does not matter how it happened and just happened. It comes to be. What this means for the Bourne Identity. The movie was well reviewed. Gilroy was no novice written by Wright as he took on the Bourne Identity after making his screenwriting debut with The Cutting of Edge in 1992. Gilroy went to open a more high profile while with the Mitchell Boys. Armageddon as such as knew that did not make a Hollywood success at that point. Is career is rich topic and is even more easily able to recognize what was going wrong in the initial phases to the Bourne Identity as the has gotten for the enough in this career, and it is now Oscar nominee for his work on Mitchell Clayton. Gilroy is also not only person who believes that the Bourne Identity is among the best in the franchise with an 84% tomato, and the movie is second best reviewed Bourne movie, the best reviewed in the 2007 the Bourne Ultimatum, and which the currently holds a 92% still the certified fresh score means that the Gilroy and the other screenwriters and had work paid off, ultimately producing a Bourne movie that the audience and the critics was satisfied with. Overtake on the Bourne Identity's development. In 2025, it is the interesting to hear about a movie whose delays worked to its adventure. It is the 5 years the film industry has large experience who major production step back periods. The first came in the 2020 when the world was irritated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The next came in 2003 when the Hollywood was faced with the strike with the VGA and the SAG after, and the period was considered uh, determined to film industry, and while 9 over 11 delays caused the degree of fear and the problem he lol gave the Bourne Identity more time to breathe. The Bourne Identity is a definitive action spy movie with a cool lead character and a plot that would not insult your intelligence. In preparation for the release of the upcoming film, The Bourne Supremacy, I decided to sit down and have another look at the Bourne Identity. I have to say that the second film in this series has a lot to live up to. Bourne Identity opens with our unidefinite protagonist afloat to the Mediterranean pressures, and that it is the picked up by a fishing boat while immediately as apparent with is not just a regular showman and clueless the boat has to doctor pulls bullets out of the mistress man's back as well as in implanted capsules and the containing what seems to a bank account number saved in the rather ignorant way. Mistress man's and Matt Damon awakens briefly gory in the immediately aggressively defenses and its dialogue and does not know how is from their own see what will be taken on the journey. Wyver will know just as much as does, and the thing will be made clearer only as he discovers them himself. Shortly after arriving the back on land in Germany, closes and the words turn to gap peak at what is the calm. Our hero is exhausted from the sleep on the park bench in the middle of the night by two police officers, and before you can say what happened and overpowers of in gentleman. The cool thing about the scene is one the definite himself the scene go into the outpilot surprising himself in knowledge that knows how to beat hell out of get two guys in the main seconds flat, and it goes from the hero there he the never quite where I thought it would go. I was kept very interested in the film by wanting to figure out of and he was okay Jackson Bourne by to arrive his current status. Plenty of very cool fight scenes editing such that although they are fast paced you can actually see what happening. Of course there's also the required car and chase where we was drawn in that it was fairly realistic for a movie car chase. The look of the movie was very much 60s spy flick, but with the faster pace there just seemed to be something about the shooting in the Europe that make film seem more timeless. But it had to find just one thing that made this movie enjoyable. It was Annie, and this guy woke up half dead. One of the know he is but managed to pace together who is where to go to find out more and how to about it, all the while having this cake as a martial and the art skill and spycraft abilities. I really thought that was just the coolest character ever. I sat there on my couch and with a blanket over me and glass of milk on the coffee table. Bourne Identity director unsure how to feel about James Bond copying his film. The Bourne Identity director is unsure of how he feel about Daniel Craig's James Bond film copying the Matt Damon led franchise based on Robert Ludlum's 1980 novel of the same name. The Bourne Identity started Matt Damon as a Jason Bond, a spy with the superior and the combat skills and intelligence. The first film saw Bond adapting to recover his memories as he ensured in a global CIA CIA conspiracy. The franchise has spawned 5 films, over 4 of which started Damon Lemon directed the first, executive produced the rest, with Paul Greengrass taking over to directing duties for the second, third, and the fifth film. Daniel Craig's first Bond film, Casino Royale, was released in 2006, 4 years after the Bourne Identity. The start of Craig 5 film, The Turners, and will be completed with this year. No Time to Die start a new era for the James Bond film. Guthrie and the more personal Garrick and the Torrance as Bond reunited, and the franchise helped to the series and renew success decade after the first film come out. Upon its release, so many thought that the Cork and the Bond resembles James Bond in the lot of ways. Now Lyman was waived in the one comparisons. Speaking to the slash film, Lyman said that always wanted to make a Bond film, but up until very recently, the series did not like American director. Lyman goes on to say what is surreal, who see the influence Jason Bourne and hand to the new Bond film. The director says that is not sure if the film how, and the whole thing is more confusing than anything. Lyman refuses to boil it down to simple dreams like poetry and nuance, saying the situation is more complex than that. I always wanted to make a James Bond movie, but they did not hire American director. But the way you have to make little and why movie, you have never go to director James Bond. I went to the made Bond Identity, and then after the Bond Identity came out, the next James Bond to come out was Casino Royale, which the totally copied to the tone of Bond. I had very surreal things. I was sort of marketing and the Bond because I really wanted to make Bond, and then Bond copied Bond. I did not quite know how to process that. I still did not know how to process that. I did not if I go what I wanted or did not get what I wanted. It's beyond my computing power to know how to feel about that. It's probably an unsatisfying answer to say him I am involved to fluttering would be easy, but I am still confused about how should I feel this. A Bond impact on the Bond undeniable. The Jason Bourne movie introduced epigenous film to a new generation of their greaters. Brilliance take a genre very clear influence James Bond as a slew of other action films to come in the 2000 in the 21st century. Arguable, it could be said that the Bond film as an easy example of the darker tone that the many blockbusters of the new millennium utilizes to various degrees of success. Casino Royale is the early example of that impact, and Bond franchise has continued to dabble in the darker writers and throughout the carriages run. Skyfall in the particular finds the Bond reckoning and with the dark past, and the film become highest grossing Bond film of all time, well as one of its most critical acclaimed. No Time to Die to seem shaping up to the darker than ever, while film always conversation with each other. In the Lemon's case, is understandable that these influences are hard to reckon, and with considering the admiration of the James and the franchise, with the new Jason Bond film in the work that could potentially tie in the up of spin-off series treads on Hollywood, it does not with the Bond quite yet, and the Bond identity influence in the like to be felt years come, regardless of how Lyman ultimately feels about it. The Bourne Identity. The Bourne Identity is a skillful action movie about a plot that exists only to support a skillful action movie. The entire story is a setup for the marital arts and the chases because they are done well, because the movie is well crafted and acted. We will it a pass. Too bad it's not about something. Well, perhaps it is. Perhaps it is about the immoral climate. Spicy agencies like the CIA. There are no good guys in the movie. Certainly not hero played by the Matt Damon, who is a trained assassin, and no bad guys either. Even the people who want to kill Damon are only doing their job. Just our guardians of the Navy, wind takers in another movie, are told to kill their charges rather than let them fall into the enemy hands. So Bond it whatever the name is target for death after the fails to assassinate and African leaders. There's a good possibility to would also the targeted if had the succeeded. As the movie opens, the fisherman on the boat out of the marshes and the spot of of body floating in obviously studio backload tank hauled abroad. The body turns out be alive to have two bolt ones and the have capsules embedded under the skin which is contained and the code to Swiss bank account. The friendly fisherman gives the rescues and man who does not remember who he is and money to the train to switches and welcomed in the nations and withdraws are forced for a bank despite unlinking name of any frame of the personal identification. Indeed, the first out of many by looking the inside right back and the bag where he finds several passports and seeing his name by the Bourne determined the find out the real name and why was floating in the Mediterranean. Bond buys $10,000 to buy guy bas named Maria and the Frank Potten for the Ron Blow a run to drive to the Paris. Meanwhile, the movie cuts through CIA headquarters in the Virginia and where his meet Bond handles Conkline Charles Cooper and his boss Abbott Baron Cox. Bourne was thought to dead and now he is alive to must be killed and the assignment goes to the group of CIA killers, especially the Professor Clive on who is highly trained to the Bond. I forgot to say the Bond is trained. It is ever he speaks the several languages, is a formidable marital and artist is highly trained power of the observation and the memory knows all the spot tricks and is a formidable driver. We see that during a sensational chase scene through the streets of the Paris much of his the narrow lies down fighting of the steps and the against the traffic. There is a compound and which the release where is to be higher level of the screenplay no greater purpose than this expand with kinetic energy. The movies brutally, cynically, happily ending the reverse. It does not take itself seriously and to cast the sooner that marriage that the girl stays in the picture only because well and there has only a girl to provide false suspense and give the longer hero someone to talk it. I found the joy and the board identity I had to put my mind to hold, but I was able to. I am less distributed by action movie like this, which is the frankly about nothing by the action movie like one triggers and which printed to the about something and then caught by the Dolph Lemon and the tractor of Bond tractor by the traffic well gets a nicely wintry look from the location absorbed with a movie spycrafty and uses Diamond ability to be focused on the sincere and the movie is unnecessary but not unskilled. Book review of the Bourne Identity, Robert Ludlums. Jason Bourne is one of the most famous action stars you can find and Ludlums was one of the first to do it despite flaming of course and has gone on the ride and a successful trilogy and then have many other books written under the Bourne name. As a result, the Bourne Identity is the first in series but it is my sort of the action thriller. The Bourne Identity introduces us to Jason Bourne who wakes up without much memory of his previous life. He does not know how he has come from, he has ended up where he has and this talented and has unknown to him. It is a great premise of a story. A man does not how to has killing machine or to spend the next 440 pages as or finding all the secrets of this past but it is way that the Ludlum rewrite in engaging or not read on find out. The Bourne Identity plot 3.5 over 5. The premises of the plot the Bourne Identity is stated above. The book started with the Bourne wake up and with a memory and the spends and the rest of the book trying to get out where he comes from it and the, all being much larger than the could never have imagined. Now this sounds like a greater idea does not it and everything you had want to the sort of the storyline is there. However, unfortunately there was Ludlum delivers to it can really drag on the time. It is a book where we will very often find yourself reading a couple of pages and realize those pages could have been discussed down in the much shorter sentences. There's so much dialogue in this book at time it can really drag. Don't get more wrong, there are some great action scenes in the book and most of the dialogue in potentially useful for character building and such. However, it really felt just and too much to keep my gripped throughout. I knew the outcome of the book before due to the feministness of the story and also having seen the film or the surprises along with very merrily to remembering that things with and you have never heard to the story of Bond before. It is a great journey. I must say the book does not as good job job as the film of simplifying what you're actually supposed to the finding out, but if you say, and it's still a rewarding discover. I must say, character are not and Ludlum best aspect. Everybody in this book could be the same character, and I am not sure you had noticed the difference. Everyone has a fairly short temper. Everybody is over emotional, and everybody over talk about the everything you want to discuss. They all the question asks and upon questions without the really needing an answer to any of them. Despite everything I have said, the interested in this story, the only person who has any of the different personality she has only one is the book that I was really that interested in and wanted success throughout the. She speaks about grounded throughout the sports. She sports and throughout is always ready to kick, but which is a nice change from all the other characters who are simply military type people. The Bourne Identity Summer 3 over 5. And The Bourne Identity is a book that had a much potential. It is the beginning of the book trilogy that is hugely success and has gone to the become one of the most successful film trilogy of all time too. It's a book that I felt as a fan of the action genre I had read. However, it also a book that I felt very convoluted and the unnecessary long. Read The Bourne Identity if you have the patience and the love reading deep dialogue that explores very single possible angel. The avoid The Bourne Identity if you want to easy light read. The focus more on the action and plot. Two thoughts on book review of The Bourne Identity by Robert Ludlum. He nobody ever noticed policy and the lease of Ludlum borrowed rather heavily from the Ernest Lamon's book North by the Northwest and the even more obviously from the Great Six Days of the Condor and the Pollock and Ridwell screen adaptation. The days of which of the Ludlum inspiration was a better and read more gripping, watch later more clever, more intense, and the agreeable, more approachable of the course. The green glass diamond interpretation left more a lasting impression in the public mind deserves not just saying. Non-review review The Bourne Identity. It's stranger to look back on The Bourne Identity knowing that it kick-started one of the most highly regarded trilogies in cinematic history. I was confessed that I was never excessively involved with the espionage thriller. I quite enjoy it, but I did not love it. Though my favorite movie of the Bourne trilogy is The Bourne Supremacy, regarded as something of an ugly stepchild of the franchise. So what do I know? Part of the appeal of the Bond movie is that the successful American and the concept of James Bond. Many American films have been proceeded with finding a version of the superstition which work on the other side of the Atlantic, and many of them, such as the Sign of the Mission Impossible Second, are the significant weak for the making the attempt. What makes a movie never release is that the components of the Bond, the protagonists and drive with it the face of moral ambiguity is the charm and sophistication, the general sense of irony and the flamboyant and the reddish judges and what element that the British and the natural floor for the frequency loss and the translation. The Bones movie, however, released that if you are building an American evaluate the Bond, you need to spread the quintessential British of the franchise and replace it with American perspective, the sense of the class and the romanticism in the first element lost, replaced by crude American pragmatism, spying in the dangerous and blood business, one of the executed with tactical simplicity and the straightforwardness rather than with a wink and a nod. The American audience especially as a very rash activity rather than the gentleman's games born in the essentially a hyper component. Thus, there is a sense of the style of fitness with the sheep power you fight dirty of you have to, because this is not about the stopping your Taxito from the getting crushed. It's about the staying alive. Although he was replaced of the sequel, director Doug Lyman handles the action well. Although the original film looks almost introspect with the compared to the two films and which follow, Lyman gives as a moment we expect from a good spy thriller, but with a little extra craft. The movie central gunfight as a much more psychological conflict as about spring bullets and with the mandatory clandestine the ravens defense and the styles executive in the middle of the crowded Paris. Sometimes Lemon allows to score the overwhelmed action. For example, the use of awkward and red sacks go during a car chase, but it is expectation rather than the rule. The other side of this coin and sometimes the movie delivers at moment in a manner just a little too serious. I don't mean that I should be lighted-hearted and fun. Indeed, one of the best things about the Lemon structure in the palpable sense of the partnership that anything for the meter mind and the fragile bank manager could be in something, but that sometimes the movie plays it more over the movement to soundtracks and the straightforward manner. At one stage, for example, the film The Mistress Man vanished behind a moving vehicle, but with a tiny van, you can clearly so Matt Damon's telling it one must be born look ridiculous the spectators rather than selves, and later the potential assassin throwing himself through a window rather than talk potatoes like a ridiculous clip from a comedy rather than the deadly series indication of just how deadly this trait is. However, the movie and these sequels are sternly effect as a presenting an intelligence community conspiracy is a manner which reflect the modern world. It is not and worst nobliest origins or chasing Evan is one guy in office track and away inside CIA headquarters, probably hidden behind masks of bureaucratic type. You asking my a direct question and ask his superior at one point aggregation and the unspoken understanding between them, and it is not a policy that have been agreed upon the and rose just one of the happened. Cherry's cover gave as man the charge of operation, the kind of the character who likely believes has fighting the new Cold War that has never been told by his superiors, and otherwise Dex is donned with not but American flags and the picture of President Bush hung on the wall. His actions are not directed by the instant and shot by conspiracy. There is allowed to continue because this is a worldwide. Nobody cares sure his action may be malicious, and this sequel is relieved is prosing his own ideology capitalism, but it enabled by a general sense of indifference. With his superior played by the Barbarian Cox get involved to cover his track. Surely the cover some of track with bodies, and the movie implies in the height most of the alleged activity behind the figures in the financially presentation by reference to some pencil pushing cost by benefit analysis help. And at one point, and the agent running the operation suggestion that his superior could handle the bond situation. Maybe you take him to that world can just as dangerous as bullets. The tragedy of the man who would become the Bond is effectively portrayed. Matt Ram plays the character as a blank slate with was probably tougher than it looks, but I must confess that I am not overly impressed. Bond is presented to the audience as something of a victim in all these, even the volunteered for the assignment rather than the being considered, and therefore the movie make it clear the Bond is victim of the huge crime. He has been finished on the $30 million weapon at the cost of the humanity. Look at what they make you give a slider in the same program. Observed he lies dying. It's a fairly rounded recommendation of an attempting dehumanized soldier to contract antithetical action. That said, some of the movie feels more that a bit manipulated. They obviously are intended to empathize with the Bond because he has the memories which perhaps explained to become an inhuman killing machine in the first place. So rather than following the decision withheld and him, there is a portrayed as a completely innocent party through the later movie do the decent job of the adding shading. However, the most blatant example of the movie clearly demanding the audience sympathy with the Bond is just with the film and portrays the character initial reaction of gun. Why on earth is Bond so afraid of gun? Within the first fourth minute, he leaves one of the safety deposit box dispenser and another and wins third. He clearly not concerned about the potential hurting people as threw them around to dolls during the countless other sequences after the discover how deadly is his physical combat, and if he is concerned about the causing harm, he could have surrendered by the various point he can nose and guard on down the stairs, which could have the potential killed by guy. In fact, I thought Bond was going back to check out was a stealing wacky tracking the further was escape. I am not condemning his action. He has good reason for the getting caught, but wondering why the character would rather engage the physical combat with a good use to gun the incapacity rather than kill. He clearly has not communication with use a knife, and so I can also assume the character reluctance use a gun is designed to endure him. Used to someone is not a hardened killer, which feels like and false given the brutal is as otherwise. The movie makes great use of its European location, especially Paris, the classic architecture lends to the movie of sense of prestige, and that is also helped and sense of timelessness to tale of a man searching of his identity beside Europe, a strange mix of the familiar with the foreign, which makes it perfect for espionage thriller, perhaps something from the Cold War. However, the ending is deeply unsatisfactory. It feels quite anticlimactic. It is clear setup for the sequel, even though the sequel seems to a rather strange jump start, which I will come back to when I review it without spoiling it for anyone he has not the film. I can just say that I does not really like anyone especially want the accomplish anything by the finish line in that sort of way. The end result could almost occur. The conference call so banal is just and have simply want up the CIA leave and more bad stuff will happen. Still a good movie and the refreshing kinetic action thriller. I don't prefer the sequel, but the original is not without charm. I think the fact that does not feel empty, the insurreal and the bright and superficial leisure of the fitness, it raw and messy and brutal, which is perhaps more of the reflection on what expect real world space games to be cared. Review the Bourne Identity. Ironically enough, as I sit down to write and movie review about a movie which features a protagonist who suffer from an acute case of amnesia, I find myself struggling to remember my own experience of viewing side film. Of course, I myself do not suffer from the amnesia, and perhaps I am being somewhat cheek. And when I speak of having trouble recalling last night movie screening, after all, I did not fact have the recollection of sitting down in the packed movie theaters and watching 2 hours movie. I would be somewhat troubled and probably would not take the time to recount and the experience to you now would. The truth of the matter in the memorable movie going experiences usually fall into the one of the two categories. Basically, the movie was either so good that you can help but hold into the memory of it, or the movie was so horrible but that it is just stick why you bad a taste in your mouth, or the smell that clings to young and long after you leave the confines of the public washroom and the same downtown mall. I generalize, of course, that I am sure you catch my drift. There are, however, these movie going experience that end by occupying a more transitory part of your conclusiveness. That is the say that the movie was entirely bad and waste of your time. It just was not good enough, beautiful enough to make the cut of being really significant, but at the same time was not so awful traumatizing that is actually scarred. I in a way the movie which I speak of are kind of that guy you and being and the guy the help girl get over the guy who just dumped her. Ladies, you know that the guy talking about. He was a nice guy, a sweet guy, even he just was not the guy. He entered your helped you get things off your troubled mind, but 6 months down the line it would have been the like the never even exist. Will the movie that I was last night the kind of the that guide I kept my occupied. I was merely entertained, but the 6 months from where I never remember going. Perhaps don't, but of the time being I will try to remember for your benefit away. Now that I think of it, I do recall the picture's name, The Bourne Identity, starring Matt Damon and the lovely German actor Franka Potente, and from the eponymous trailer for the run, and I alluded to earlier, Damon plays the amnesia who deposed to being the remember or think period to moment he is plucked out of the Mediterranean Sea by some Italian fisherman as the same entirely with the slot of the dice by dreading knowledge such as a marital arts and all sorts of weapon falling for little claws and are available to him. Damon animatic character make a high from the Italians fishing and the swing back where he has soon discovered a possible identity, several in fact a blood of case and a gun assuming the identity of one of men, all bearing the same likeness depicted in the many international passports found in the safety deposit box. Jason Bourne must have to piece together these true identity and the memory of his life as one of the donatic enough of the taste, and the Bourne must do all the while adding purchase by the bunch of the CIA created assassins and with the innocent Maria, victim of the happiness now in. The Bourne Identity is a straightforward action espionage thriller based upon the novel of Robert Ludlum, directed by the Love and the Dove Lyman. The Bourne Identity follows by the free runner path that is executed in such a way that viewer attention does not study to look and shot on the location. In Paris, the movie has an obvious European feel which is lends the quite nicely to the space thriller genre and felt in the intense and violent scenes featuring some nicely choreographed and fight as well as the rather brilliant car chase. The undoubtedly raised the bar and the chase sense to come. The Bourne Identity indeed a stylish and visual viewing experience not like earlier film of the franchise dialogue was. In fact, the European backdrop and the highly stylish scene of the violence it comes because the evident that the Lemons has consciously or unconsciously borrowed by heavily from the films of the best, most notable by Lemon necked and less stylish plagiarism state. It must be noted, however, that what Lemons is unable to accomplish that was is able to do this film is bring a sense of depth in the character. After all, despite of suffering from the amnesia, Jason Bourne is still capable of involving a character just because he cannot remember who he is does not make the character of Bourne and mindless. Robert Lyman does these the audience with sense in which Bourne has experienced emotion or reaction that was strictly triggered by the constant action that continuously like the place around him, with the responsibility of having to take care of the Maria Portland who becomes a victim of the malware become into the contact with the Bond does share a moral and sentimental bond with Italian and the only woman he knows. However, instead of examination the unique and fact the romantic documentary of the character Lyman is to an access to movie on the next scene of the awe-inspiring strong work as the action by spy thriller is not a genre that the depth of character or narrative brilliance but add to the mix a screenplay that is far too loose when it comes to carrying the plot along and case of the stopping editing and you have to plot that one point in the unusual can severely damage a movie narrative discourse. The Bourne Identity marks the Matt Damon debut, a fluid-fledged and action hero, and surprisingly Damon is quite capable and the whole department dominist and the depths of the marital actor a kick punch over the perhaps not of the flawed actor himself but more of the casting mistake. Damon Menken by next door good looks and just do not fight right against the grey winter of the Paris and among the more weathered looking European actor present in the movie. Damon innocent look dolls and does lend itself well to the American them to be surprised by his own daddy abilities but a whole the character look out of the place even the senses deposit patent who is supposed to be the bond love and trust. Damon just seems mismatched with the presence of the guitar and look the German actor but out of the duel it is important to give the Bourne Identity is much needed to the humanity it move on the ports of the Bible's emotional depth in the name of the fantastical shows of the physical identities those potent performance both in the look and her actual theatrical performance that the audience is able to make that little emotional connection with their the mostly cold and hardy spy thriller. It is thanks to potent that were even able to find some light humor between the sense of the casual gunfire and the violent parts of the fist of one must wonder if the Bourne Identity could have been more of the unique and less glitch of a movie. It had not followed by the typical path of the male-oriented action movie and had instead concentrated on the more dynamic story of Maria. Perhaps it was then the Bourne Identity could have left a little more of an impression and less likely to forgotten by the end of the summer's strings of blockbuster movie to come. The Bourne Identity 2002 Classic Review Knives and Pen. Considering the fact that Jason Bourne is releasing later this month, there has never been a better reason to talk about this incredible action franchise that introduced us to the man known as Jason Bourne. And there are some spoilers here and there, but you have had plenty of time to this time film. So here it is the introduction to the best action trilogy of all time and one of the strongest and most consistent trilogy to ever have excited. And the Bourne identity in this film, Van wakes to find himself in the middle of the sea with no identity and no knowledge of his past. As he hunted down the uncovers more and more about this mysterious past and the man he used to be. This movie blended element of action, mystery, suspense, and some light humor, all in way that made this a very well crafted and thoroughly entertaining thrill ride. You have very exciting facts and paced, grounded action set pieces, great characters, fantastic performance, and a touch of mystery to add another layer to what do otherwise be a basic plot. The only thing I miss when watching this film is not being able to remember my first experience with it. What I would give to see this for the first time again. Let's start off the with action because when it comes to close quarter hand to hand combat, no one is ever going to be close to overcoming Jason Bourne. His fight scenes are instant, exciting, and full of awesome brutal fact paced combat. Sometimes they briefly touch on the multiple jump cuts approach, but overall the scenes are very easy to watch. And there are so many memorable fight scenes in this film. The main one being where he fights knife-wielding assassins with a fucking pan. The guy could turn a ham sandwich into the deadly weapon if it needed to. The serious constant find new ways to up to excitement and up the stakes in every film, and when you start with a pan fight scene, it's only up from here. Also one of my favorite shots in the trilogy, no matter how unrushed and in my scene, the Jason Bourne falls with the style down a shortless and flight off the stairs on the back of a body shots a guy in the head half down and does not end up a and Matadom, Jerry Cooper, and Brain Cox were all amazing in their roles as very different characters with very contrasting personality. Especially today, it is hard to look at these actors and not see their countless other recognizable roles, but they play the character too well with a much dedication to the role that it is the role you think of you see them in another film. Franca Potton plays a likable character who is serviceable to the plot and acts the love and trust but was not overly impressive in her performance. You empathize for the character and do really get behind for the sticking with Jason Bourne considering the mess she has the dragged into, but it was not the strongest performance in the film. She does have a good amount of chemistry with Bourne and complements his rather blank expression and rather will throughout the film. Also, what I thought this film did very well was how is handled being as an individual film as well as setting up a very successful franchise. It has a fairly close and contained story. You can walk away from this having been a beginning, middle, and aware of the main points have been seemingly and constant, and at the same time are small hints placed throughout the film and minor character who don't get a full arc that lead or to their presence in the sequel without making this film seem unfinished, expertly with together if you ask me. So that's for this look back at the birth of Jason Bourne, the man who proves time and time again the gems and Bond would not stand a chance in this universe. It is a fantastic all-around very entertaining action thriller, the spawned and the greatest action movie trilogy of all time. The Bourne Identity Review. It was old-fashioned and a new breed of spy film at the same time, and it ended up being one of the most influential films of the past decade. Doleman, The Bourne Identity as a great action film that feels very cold but still managed to engage on a number of levels, including an emotional one of there are no real reason why should we root for the Jazz Bond, what do we do and what has to be a result of strong storytelling and traction from the Lemon and the great performance by Matt Damon. And while this film does not and feature the same distinctive visual style of the successor, which was directed by Paul Greengrass, its action scenes are crisp and interesting. The whole trilogy is expectational, one of the best in a year, and it is something I enjoy the going back to over and over again. Jason Bourne is a lethal spy, seemingly inextricable weapon with the US government, but he has no idea after being shot to twist in the back and threw overboard he completely loses his memory. With no idea he was, who knows, and where he comes from, the beings of the wonder actors Europe. Eventually, he tracked down the address and hires a defitor Mar Frank to be himself to this Paris apartment. Was there he attacked and the assassins, but Bond makes quickly work of him, and the pieces of his former life began to come together. One Bond's and trail is the conclave at the raid of the Tretson, a covert government agency, and the Bond former handler who wants to be one of the picture after the Bosch a time he has a number of resources. Tretson asset it Bond wants to find who is the stop these ones and all needs to go and the white performance spinner, and while everyone he goes to he also needs to get him to talk of and for the only way to get the calling, and the calling is very only who knows to Jason Bourne real is. The Bourne Identity is first and foremost an action film, and what the want exemplary at the fight scene are gritty, shaky, come in present, but it is not everything like it is the sequels. The film's photography is great, especially during this scene. The standout on the film showdown between the Bourne and the professor in a field of the grass, stunning, a very well executed. The film also completely reveals an idea of our hero. The film and the protagonist is the undoubtedly born. He want to him the prevail, but should we? In the film, the main anglos and the assassins of Provel or the government official. It has a new interesting twist in the action genre made ever of the classimetric and the charming route for him because the his and the vulnerable characters that does not is describe the action roles. We also wrote of the Bond because the mad dominant performance make him oddly likable. Bond is a very driven individual, probably because he has nothing, and unlike Jackson Bond, he does not to make the jokes sound in the is a drag to watch, but it actually quite of lot of fun. The supporting cast excellent, and none of the performances are revelatory everything, but they all or their jokes well cries on can be charming. The has and more including in this film contain the Bond and the professor from the necessity to clean up the mess it feels like to be Friday, and the worse he slowly becomes are willing to whatever he must to prevent that happening. Finally, Thora Frank Potent Omar is a film and we actually are bored of because the Potent a very combination performance. When it comes to modern action film, the Bourne Identity one of the best and probably one of the most beloved respected. It is a traditional while the still being very modern and influential, plus it is got great action writing and the direction. What more you can ask for? The Bourne Identity Film Review. The blogger, otherwise known as the scientist, gone wordy, and I returned to close not only the month but the first half of 2014. Where the hell has the 1 year gone? And do not say in the handset, please. This time will not do with the espionage thriller of some repute. One of that began and it live 34 years ago between a book cover. For this, Rachel suggested something that had a connection with my reading past of long ago. In fact, I recall this one of the one's book of the month club selection. It's how I come to read it. The former and the Moraine turned theatrical actor, the procedure, and the Robert Ludlum eventually began writing suspenseful spy novel to make ends meet. With the hundreds of millions before his death in March 2001, he certainly accomplished that. Plenty of his 2 dozen plus conspiration thrillers were read by many of the fans consider the Bourne Identity to be one of the finest, I think his best novel. Drawing on the only the character the author ever used in the sequels, as usual the word will be pressure. The 1980 novel, while I examined its 2002 film adaptation. Rachel book review can be found here. The Bourne Identity by Robert Ludlum, and a brief synopsis of the film. Miles offshore Miller's franchise of fishing vessel has climbed to unexpected catch, and the unconscious man floating in the waves of the Mediterranean storm. Upon the examination, he has been shot in the back. Ever more strangely, has a small device implemented in his ship, deviling as a account number of a Zack back. Moreover, upon the raging conscience and the stranger climbs to know the name and a part of his identity, his young fate and the skill that can into the question his merits and the set of find his had the need help from the woman his path in trace along the with the physical expertise and the repairs in the seeming process to stay alive. For other temperate in the some dog tradcraft and trying to kill him. I swear to God, if when I feel somebody behind me, there is no message to how to fast and hard, I will bring this fight to your drops and I am on my own side. When Robert Ludlum decided to have the character lose his memory, he was playing with the idea of being born again, reborn, because he had to find out who he was, and he closed the name Bond for the reason. Like 12 years ago, I had an awareness and the approach. This work my Lord Lump once more for my film review, rereading the novel the first time since 1980 and the comparing its 2002 motion pictures reincarnation in the post 9 over 11 world and world the book showed and each in not less and made me reappreciate the storytelling craft for the author. I think all thriller junkies, all myself to through a spy novel hooked on the intros and the unique art is offered. Over the years since its release, I had number of the reviews and points that extracts with the movie sequels to the Bourne Identity, both done by the English famed director Paul Greengrass, one the best of the series, while the certainly were head and shoulders above the last one, the Gillies and the Bourne Legacy. However, the Greengrass approach about the conspiracy he simply built on the foundation door lemon, but together the rebirth one of the most complex spy character outside the eternity. And the director Lemon's father worked for the Nationality Security Agency NCA under the Ronald Reagan and influence in the he had to utilize for his film. A fan of the novel since high school, Lemons and Matter was the introduced Jason Bourne to film the going public in the spectacle fashion. He and the screenwriter Tony Gloro came up the means of the modernization the 120 year to meet the worldwide viewers' expectation as a director as falling to the cause of the world the centers towards. Jason was the concern of 17th terrorism, appetized, and the role of the bogeyman used in the novel grows the jackal but kept the central premise of the high skilled approach with the amnesia. Now, characters suffering some of the sword anxious have a long standing in the literature film from the 1945 Small Bond in the recent Shutter Island 2010, which has the base of Dennis Levin's novel and through in between Latram's books and the character too has been provincial and even before its adaptation. I have little dropped Sandbag's similarly plotted script of the long case Good Night reused the idea of the scaled association losing her his identity. He will drop the anxious aspect of the novel entirely and just apply it deception to trap the terrorists of the popes of John Franklin's run. Again, do not tell me writer G.D. Zach or the David Madrid had not probably read the Bourne Identity at some time before scripting such. Still, the Floating Lemon and the Blurs under the movie reviews of the Expanse and the more modern, less gadget-filled spy fear operate the entire others in the same time tried the novel Breathos and the reverberated into the film territory as the film did in the venerable movie franchise Counterparts and the 2006 reboot of the Conscious Roles, clearly a response to what his filmmaker successfully accomplished on that form. The Q replacement John Cheese is not a fan of its thumb. Like the format procedure is established a template of the procedure and sequel to follow as Green Gas did this Lyman falling back to the executive producer duties. Based on the initiate fighting techniques from the Philippines, Cali offers close the quarter combat on the US Special Force and the enforced now use. Director Great Evans continued the trends of the South Asia and the martial arts with this film features panic salt and the enthralling skill and the damage and character. Check introduced a close quarter fighting style to the two were down and opponents with and dazzle movie goes Cali check to the end a reverse chess sequence on foot and it the carry through the coordinates and the unusual of an exacting location check and double check. I don't mean to shatter it's in the first film of the Bond trilogy Green Grass Yellow feature the succeeding sequels with the increasing intensity. The work of the most part my complaint aside he and director Martin Campbell would do same with the you know who. I am getting at this film the Bond Identity did not get it right in the film place and a number of other action thriller do not come about the likewise it is a gamble the trait of the movie studios use in their most brilliant trait of the rest or the decade copying using an in-right director who did not enjoy the box office success period with a small and entrust him and the enter he had the academic award on his mantle but not the word would think the screenwriting calculate the odds, wedges, and who have given this. Utilizing a long in the tooth spine novel as a basis, the thrill they came together to catch the lightning in a bottle, author universal procedure has with the bat of the surrounding with them the experience talent, especially in the sporting cast, Thaddeus Cooper and the Scottish demigod in the Baron Cox, the Stantos for sure, yet Frank Spot and Julius Stiles, Clive on Evans, Annika H. by Galbert Mann, and Just 5 and Walter Gonix were not the job in live their efforts. Their Tony Gallery and the William Beck Horror effect started on the best film adaptations around. They did not some much translate Robert Landon's actress in the descent and dramatic revelation reveals and dislike the story down to the SCS, a journey of the clarity, one that when the confused and engaged protagonist from the otherwise and the martial arts back to the his track begin. And now New York movie reviews, and we have toward the Bourne supremacy to reach the heart of the subvert on the soldiers core with the Bourne ultimatum. Needless to say, the author accomplished the feat of 500 plus pages lemon, and the company would need the film even close the irony. And here was the Robert Ludlum's substance, and the sequels only one down in the quality with each rails of his next Bourne books. It stunned this reader to write that the opposite true of the film versions the borrowed these days. The Bourne identity too often gets the shortage and the my opinion document unexpected and the agreeable delivered in the best action thriller of 2002. It is the so inflated employing some dynamic sequences remains well placed to told him complying tell the 100 at more setting a new standard of that shoot for it does not happen too often in the formula driven end of today filmmaker add in a tout scored by the John Paul with the same help by the Paul O'Connor Fall, the Machines and Moby, and you had a level thriller and all front that the met the expectations of reader and movie fans, at least for this espionage junkie. The Bourne Identity Review. A bullet-ridden amnesiac in the rescued from the drawing by the Finnish travel only to find himself the unwitting target of enemies. In his real, the restless assassins they think is, and he will even the long enough to figure it out. With a 2-year shooting schedule, a script what was the regard craft more the time, and then the cause cares to remember, and Matt Damon making at least 2 movies, Ocean's 11 and spread in the middle of all that mess. This thriller come to the cinemas as much market, and it's the central character. Some of the joins do show, especially towards with and the film when a couple of minor characters disappear completely, but it had been a too much fan to picking the whole. From the moment Jason Bourne, an excellent Matt Damon, discovers his true powers, taking out in the blistering style 2 cops with accuse him of loitering, a new hero is created. Damon plays Bourne as a man of cat-like instinct. He can make a weapon of the fountain pen and sounds danger at the most innocent of signs. One of the across Europe with the Batmic potent his quest to find himself because more involving since he is the opposite in nature in physical appearance. This blue-eyed, innocent-looking American wants to be a judge that and yet much to his horror. He cannot help using calculate efficiency to dispose of any who represent the challenges of him. Doll Lemon's swinger goes seemed an unlike choice as an action director, but his handheld camera style and the improvisational work to hand and across actors clearly evidence here. However ridiculous the situation, and there are some extremely ridiculous situations, he maintains and of here the heightened realism about the treatment of Bond's predicaments, the pump sound effect at the grossness of the fight sequence. Listen for the moment when the pen is pulled out of the Bin Assassin's hand. It is a 4 Bourne's sequel would welcome. Nothing is the Bourne identity stand up to close the examination, but that does not stop it being a recurring blockbuster ride and the perfect Saturday night for the spectral turns and for twist and return to keep the audiences guessing, and Matt Damon delivering as an action hero. The Bourne Identity. The Matt Damon Bourne Identity was not your father's spy movie, but maybe the 3 hours 1988 TV miniseries with the Richard's combinations as Don't and Am I Your Father. I thought it was pretty good. Like the later one and the Robert Ludlum book, I am guessing it opens on a boat where Cumberland's King Sloman's Moines gets shot and falls overboard. He sinks to the bottom as but manages to wake up and swim to surface. Later watching and ashore in a small village in France. And you can know they do the experiment sometime where they have somebody lay on the street and pattern to the unconscious, and the suspects everybody likes walks to them and does not try to make sure they are okay, and not true of this crime. He is like his mystery and you okay, but he does not answer. Eventually you unknown human individual carry him and dump him on the doorsteps of the Washburn as a livable doctor who lost his license due to the alcoholism played at the Donman Elliot. He uncleansed doctor him back to the health. When the wake he has no idea who is the dog. The surprise by the American accent, he noticed something too. Lots of scars with have been treated better if they had happened in war of science. Plastic surgery, a small implement average with the number of a bank account in the Zurich. You know, nothing big. Also, when you outside, some guys recognize him and run away. He chases them to the grapevine and what they know about him, and one knife come off his instant cake and the cake both. Meanwhile, the TV news is on the affluter about the terrorist named Charles who just assassinated in the embarrassed and got away. I mean, this doctor should be scotted settled, but like this John Doe so the gives him so much crash and the ranges right off him. One being thanks that the kinda funny at the time point. Washburn makes a definite comment about him being a brain surgeon, implying that could have caused the amnesia taking the bullet, as you cannot blame him because he is not a pro. Maybe all the could have been avoided if he had been brought a real medical facility and not just some dope house. Anyone he has to pretend to know he is, and he is doing whenever somebody seems to know him to tries to question them or get them to something that they help. It is the bank that he sees names J. Bourne at the hotel where conscious goes Nam has in unusual usual performance in his mate or Mara Jackson Smith. Charles Angela, a beautiful Canadian accomplished in the later cars and well made to journalists. He takes her hostage. This, I think, is the first big change and made the modern version. I believe Damon Bond padded Franca pretend married to drive him. It's as a smart way to make him for sympathetic, but I like this main version because you don't know how to the gonna go. We have the reason to believe that is actually that treasure Carlos even though does not know it, it may be the trustworthy, and that part of the hook of the amnesia game maker is not that it is the danger does not understand the context. It is also that could ever will be a horrible terrorist murder guy, not a fun thought to wake up with. Only after she expects him and run into the tall trench coat in the silencer crowd chasing him to the claim to the police does not start what going on. They get to information out of her, then seemed like they were going to kill her. Bond could not go away, but the coming back to the saver rap and against devices. She starts with him and the using the recognition and understanding the banking of it is tensions relationship. So I mean, you have to long romantic slow motion otherwise success and sex scenes with the violence music, but she sees all that killing he is the connector to tries to get. I have to say watching the reminded of new and good of very the Bourne Identity as even having enjoyed the 2003 version. I was wrapped in the how the ammunition mistress would unfold in the first 19-minute episode, and I was surprised how too different it was story wise and anywhere from I remembered the new one, but I believe it gets drastically different in the second half. Eventually we learned that if the understand correctly, spoiler, there was a different guy named Jason Bourne who was the killer following Carlos around the trying to beat him to targets and going to the traitor program, killing the real Bond and the plastic surgery to guy to kill and place to the could draw out Carlos. After getting Castle all the around Europe, he finally draws got the Carlos in the most unlikely and intimate setting, his childhood bedroom, as if what they were wrecking photos and were the remnants of a life it does not remember. It sort of says that the innocent Kurt, the pictures does not real exist anymore. Now he has killer, now he has Jason Bourne. Through much of the story, the exactly the same, pretty much very single thing anybody associate with the modern Bourne movie is not all in the version. Of course, the camera work is very classic and held using professional devices designed to photograph with the stabilizations and the intent. Close up by using within specific reason, and the editing in calm and reasonable. There is exactly zero no electronical dynamic music of any kind in this one of not even the one that is the credit of all the other one. Instead there are good and ominous classic score by the Lawrence Risanthal roster Goburn Cash of the Titan and the young Indian Joe's Chronics you like to would do in old fashioned thriller. And I am not sure, but I think the board at the beginning might buy the model very view miniature model in the newborn movie in my opinion. The book was only at 8 years old the time and not in or the modernization in the revolution, so there is none of the stuff involving people in one room talking and with the device looking at the 25 different monitors zooming in with security footage and using a satellite and saying bunch of cool jargon and apply a note of courting with an fantastic admiration for the modern civilized state. Instead, it's old times sparkly like munch on the bright of the spice. In fact, the wardroom is the replaced by the end office with a secret bookshelf where a sunsetter meet with a team of experts including adorability British couple who had would not necessarily pay for the leading contemporaries expert based on their outward appearance. Director of young director under science and the rolling threatened, by which I mean the 1986 TV movie and the two-part Headcrafts and the Micromic episode guest starting John Sex respectively. Young also did the 2005 version of features in the opinion one hash and how goes to ever the burst outwards come dot, and the screenplay in by the Cortel Spospeak and the wrote on the Nokian Rose Annie the toy and the fried green tomatoes, but was apparently not related to the Liz Sobieski who was in the Aforementioned Hercules. For two movies and based on the same story, I think this and 2000 film have an entirely different appeal. Damon, especially at the time of the first movie, and had a regular dude sort of the reliability, and I think some of the dudes live apart because of the fantasy they could have a secret life as a highly skilled super association who can jump off one of the window in the building to another window in the building or use a paperback book as a ready weapon. Chamberlain does not have that feel all that and more of an incredible handsome for the bust and required unrolled scratcher zingers in the total recall, and where you might not be in the same space as the guy but you have to harder time seeing yourself handing out with the compelling that Damon is my opinion. So it is a very new way granting the spy thriller, just a gradual spy thriller but a solid one. History: the original Robert Ludlum book was the first in the trilogy. The series was extant after the Ludlum death in the so far additional novel by the Eric Van Lustberger at the 2002 Dow Lyman movie is followed by the three Paul Greengrass directed sequel and the spin of the Bourne Legacy. The original novel also inspired in 1989 Indian film Vital Visa. And this entry was posted on the Thursday, August 11th 2016 at the 12:02 p.m. and the word under the review thriller. You can follow by any responses to this entry through the RSS2 feed. You can skip and relieve a response pinning in the currently not allowed. 7 responses to Bourne Identity. Man Lofson, August 11, 2006 and 1:55 p.m. The thing I remember most about this show much gets bait. I did lot of finishing watching this kid. Borg 9, August 11, 2006 at 2:44 p.m. Maybe it is just me thus player of this watching a bunch of British actor TV better wagon first Medical Shan Remer Candidia. I know in 18's US miniseries I just checked and the Shan Remer in the still with us at the age of 87. Somehow this makes unhappy. There was a time here in the UK when all the Americans on the TV were Sean Remer and the Bishop on the William Hootings. Majimi Pai, August 11, 2006 at 3:33 p.m. The Mad Bourne Identity was not your father's spy movie, but maybe the 3 hours 1988 TV miniseries with Richard Clamberin is and did not know I am your father. If your father was an older father in the 60s and what and like to read, he has a fan of Ludlum and Bourne. I don't remember watching this, but I am sure it was viewed in my household. Maybe I was off or doing something nostalgic, and the people on the internet did not think kids know. And nowadays, like catching farlers or playing stickball in the streets until the stirring came out. Would have been 14 at the time. Okay, so I was probably being salted in my bedroom, dreaming on the one day I could move on the LA and marry Corey Ham. Paxman, August 2016 at 2:37 a.m. This was the mine and my father's spy movie. We had to both just read the book when the movie came in the post, and a free gift from the old man's book club. I like it and have see it 2 or 3 times. Deccan Metabom, August 14th, 2016 at 6:43 p.m. So was it like a running joke that you are never gonna view the regular Bond movies? Are you supposed to like the acknowledge it? I am just gonna admit that don't get it. Zumbo, August 14, 2016 at 10:15 p.m. I am not a fan of the updated movie, having seen the first two, but I did not enjoy this one, and upon first viewing it back in that magical time known as the Atheists and the Against a few years ago, it was a good TV miniseries movie and never tried to give me a headache unlike the newer film. I don't look for the but don't give me a headache with your drawing camera motion and such cuts is kind of mandatory for these days. Movie review: The Bourne Identity 2002. Every little boy has a secret agent phase. It's the perfect job for the 10-year-olds, and under it dangerous and exciting. You meet new people all the time. They have amazing toys, and there is no buzzing mom to call you out on the violence of your layers. I would have loved Jason Bourne if was born 10 years earlier. Unfortunately for the Matt Damon, Love Diamond, and the Robert Ludlum, I was raised on the 80s action cinema, so their brand of the hypertrophic and the airbrushed movie maker lives on more distracts with the entertained. More on that later. The Bourne Identity, the spy thriller that was supposed to make Spurs cool again. Although it gathered enough steam to generate two squads, it never moved the needle of the genre. There is a reason for that, and which we get into. Italian fisherman find a boy advert during a storm. The body is belong to a handsome middle-aged man, Matt Damon. With the bullets jammed in his bag, the man cannot remember who he is, and yet he is lighting quite reflecting and advanced combat knowledge. The fisherman drop him in Zorge, where the man follows a clue that the boat's medic and the found sever under his skin. His name is Jason Bourne, and there are people after him for the reason he does not know why. He had sensed them using the little training that was embedded in his brain. Running away from a threat of does not understand, he hatches right with the Marco's Frank Portent, a trouble yet innocent bastard that will get caught in the crossfire of the origins allegiance of being Jason Bourne. This has to stop for her sake, but it's difficult to stop something when you barely remember your own name. There is a persecution reclaimed at the center of the Bourne Identity. I don't think it was a deliberate, but whatever the made the movie appealing. The message it realizes is emissions feelings to the track of the being you have to order despite no you are out and living unembarrassed by the burden of your mistake. You're armed with a deadly secret agent skill. It is a fantastic many entertained in the secret. I respect it was not the original intent of author Robert Ludlum, who wrote a series about the expecting the past and movie on, but they blank slat secret agent gimmick brought forward and what the entitled viewers of the project themselves through under Jason Bourne, and therefore get the movie enough attention to generate two sequel scenes in front. And like that, a movie that does not appeal to your secret garden fails to simulate something visual in the you see the Bourne Identity and the least go that going for itself. Jasmine even has his own private girl next door, still not convinced it's as a prescription fantasy, because I don't see that as the Bourne Identity has. It is a movie filmed in the shaky cam, also the choice cinemas which have the goal to transmit the sensorial reflection of what is the being Jason Bourne fighting by guys that running away in the intense car chases rather than the transmit visual data. And I don't the anybody who actually love that. I know casual moviegoers who are influencers, and I know the semi competent of love the despise me, but I don't know of anybody who had seven. Wow, it is intense. I wish every movie has made like that. You know why? Because it is have happened and nobody ever said that it's a bullshit attraction techniques that became fad in the Hollywood circles at the turn of the century. And fortunately, in the seemed to have to dried off here. The Jason Bourne movie are evolving, and the Bourne Identity was interesting to me for its gain understanding of that make the inner self trick, but I don't help finding it mindless. And the operative since would have to know the such a success if it had been released anytime before the 2002 in the mid-rise and of the 9 over 11 attacks and the global passionate that the size of collective imagination. I have my doubts, but that the Bourne Identity suffers the way of added value of its era stock of winning formulas and crafted his small place in the history of spy movie. Can you budge a perfect for the wanting a success icon by the Just Born movie will survive for the time for the wrong reason for the made at the right time in the right time. Still not convinced. More on the tomorrow as well. I review the Bond supremacy. Sorry I had to, who by the way was original thinker but never the most talented. What makes to seem the least? I know it's considered a quality of an action movie to the mindless, but I beg to differ. The Born Identity Review. If you are anything like me, the mere of idea and espionage influenced by the thriller ranks pretty low on your list of the must-sees. It does not because the genre is deficient or unexciting, but because of all the decent story have already been told and all the gadgets has been seen and all the explorations and the chases have been done in depth. I mean seriously, how many times are we going to see the American British supremacy one open a back channel to the Russian German super spy by their saving the world from something horrible and insidious? Even legions of the Spanish genre are tried. Thankful in the Bourne Identity, the stakes are much lower than saving the world, and the result in a cozy ride when your hero is pulled aboard a fishing boat with a couple bullets in the back, no memory and number tattooed on side. Thus becomes search for the man we will come back and know as a Jason Bourne met Tom trying to figure out who he is all the while leaving a trailer of bodies dodging assassins. One has pops open a safety deposit box and find it packed full of cash, passports, and other documents. Bond begins tracking to Paris to see what can turn at the address they uncover in order to travel without leaving paper trail. Offers Mara Frank patent $10,000 to drive him there. The two form the immediate bond of Bond Dodge in the purchase and tries to get to the bottom of his there are plenty of things to like the Bond Identity. For starters, Diamond gives Bond a generally likable person, even his continues in cover pieces of his past that the not wholly admirable. It was very cool to watch Bond words and reaction with the fans outweighs an expert in the marital art. They are also part of the appeal of the film as a whole, even though we are on the fact that Bond was and the nose notice guy in the great fun of the watching the discover for himself. Second, the relationship between the Jess and Amara is very well done, never really bogging down story setting up the familiar damsel in the stress. Matt was he marries the action participant in the story and the several steps above the typical spy Kennedy potent round power and the Lola run powers no flag as the makes mark on the movie likable character to populate a spy film in the good file. And Chadwick Cooper, one of my favorite, also show up the conclave, the head of the secret CIA operation. Cooper said nails to the broadcast who has the forgotten how to shoot a weapon legacy unused in the however in the brain Cox and the Julius slides bodies and actor related to forgettable roles. Finally, the Bond Identity DOES and indeed have some traditional action element including a car chase that will in your errors the lacking the speed and the depth of chassis in the film like Ron in the nevertheless as straight as any Aston mini bagging and the staircases alas and narrow streets of Paris is several nail-biting movements. Bond actually whips the car who down by the streets also expertly crafted in the sequence while Bond meets the case in the boat daylight with the spines of spooks and trials watching the scene all in the definite on the checkout line director of the swingers and go back the film beautiful does not reason to as the abdomens of the chassis help even the film some signature visual movement in a summer nuclear bomb blowing in the Blackman CGI scopes and the bunch of lines descending on the earth. The Bond Identity is a nice from back in the spy thriller of old and it cooler too. Review the Bourne Identity. Space intrigue, amnesiac, and exotic European locals are the elements that make up the new spy thriller The Bourne Identity. Matt Damon returns to lost locals he visited in the talented Mr. Reply to take a check and the involving Hollywood spy genre. Matt Damon stars and author Robert Ludlum's prey, the spy Jason Bourne. Bourne ends up in the finishing nets of the visual of the coast of Missouri. He has no idea who he is, where he has been. His only clue is bank account. Number surgical interest into his body. Bond must unravel the mysteries to what and who he is before a convert government agency and the Bond life. The agency is run by the mistress that long, and we must kill Bond before they remember who he is. And Bond also strangled with a Gaspar tribe student named Mary Frank Potent and a lethal assassin, the Professor Clive on. Before I walked into this film, I had found the memories of the 1988 Richard Chamberlain mini-series version of the Bond Identity. Chamberlain was at the top of the game in the 80s and is still of the most understand actor from the era. From the Thorn Birds to the Sojourn Avalanche, the Bond Identity. Chamberlain was the main behind of the greatest mini-series of the 1980s. His run as a Jason Bourne was debonair and dashing. He brought an unforgettable struggle with identity mysteries and the nicheless attitude that I had been ever seen before in a cinematic space. This is what made me always remember the miniseries. Also, how could you forget the Jacqueline Smith and with was the during and discovers as Jason Bourne. There has been a quite few changes to the character of the Jason Bourne since 1988 in the latest treatment of the classic Robert Ludlum character, and he does not wash ashore in a French village. Is after a man named Carlos, and all the elements of the Cold War have been vanquished. I can understand all the changes made up updated the character. So what do not the spell locked in the Cold War, the spirit of the Bond character in intact, the search of the clues of the forget past in the some very strong action from the strong Matt Damon as well. Really understand his character plot. My only problem was why did not element and the thread of Carlos. Instead, we have only a series of the assassinations and the no coupons, and we have this kind of the spy stuff before it Matt Damon performance, and we will craft it scratching of the film by director Dolph Lemon and make this movie to get the excited about. Lemon really has fun with the Damon and his brutal and instant action sequence. I love the sound effect and the intensity showcased in this sense. It was a little hard to believe the pretty boy Damon and execute those movie, but the character created kind of the dares. Damon's character is not surely why can do with the can, and that make the sense believable. I really like Damon in the card check film The Rounders, and it was the film that made me with him on this journey. I Rounded was not afford to get rid of the captive with made the cheery and born in the scene. Damon tries to uncomb in his outer look, and the development more deleted persona is the skated like her has in the talented Mr. Reply and Rounders, and even all the pretty horses. Damon eventually as actor and continues to prove his more the just of the people magazines top 25 boast beautiful people. Director Lemon had the critical sex with the film like Go and Swings, but the new that is director would embrace the spy as genre with such as the scenes where Damon finally confront on is the film the excellent example of the eyes and the secure Lemon feels while he is directing this film. The scene of the come without a hatch of becomes one of the best scene of the film. Lemon knows movies, and I can wait to see if you allow to him directed a sequel to this film. I had loved to see more Bond movie. I wanted sequels to the Camberland version of the Wide Note, some with the new and advanced diamond version. There are some illusions and in the center of the film as following the Bond and Mario into the country, but there are a pay of it and of the journey. I also want to little more of the confrontation between the Bond and his handle. We have been kind of the confrontation in of the spy movie like Mission Impossible, but I was hoping to twist of the plot of another invited bloodthirsty doll. I like the film the served by the wonder it may be the couple more white cards could have been thrown on the mix and for our fives to say the Suthi here.